Yes. We cannot continue living in a country of being hostages, being captives. And it's possible to change this situation. So, we are busy in meetings to structure our specific actions. As PFT first, even after this press, we are going back to our meeting. You found us in a meeting, we are going back to structure how we move. But secondly, apart from being PFT, we are busy talking to all the other actors. You may have seen over the weekend, I had a meeting with the leaders of NUP, and those meetings are continuing. We are talking to all the other parties as usual, and the direction is mobilization. We cannot allow General Muhoozi that he's the only one who can talk to Uganda, that others have no right. He will kill us trying to talk to our people. Mobilization, organization, action is where we are going. Suggested ideas in this book, the transition agenda. What will happen in the restructuring of the state once the ownership of the state has changed? It's the restructuring of the state. But how do we change the ownership? You can put it down there. The ownership of the state, again, at the risk of sounding quite repetitive, the ownership of the state, it is our contention, will be achieved through a fight, not through the auctions or elections that are being talked about. The people of Uganda must fight for their ownership of the state. Just like you hear in criminal cases, the state versus BESIGYE, when I am the accused, it must be the people of Uganda versus the mafia that captured the state. The people must fight for their ownership. Nobody will fight for their ownership. They must fight for their ownership. So our role is mainly twofold. We have not been very successful in those roles for a number of challenges, but they remain our roles. The first one is to awaken those people who must take back their state, conscientize them, get them to understand the dynamics, mobilize them. And that's where we are going to put full throttle going forwards. Mobilization of the country. Mobilizing them not to vote, but mobilizing them to take action, to fight for their ownership. Two, for them to take their ownership, they must be organized. And we, in the mobilization we are taking, this is already going on. Fortunately, organization doesn't have to be visible. Even when we have not been visible, a lot of work has been going on, organizing. The organization for struggle which we are engaged in, different from the organization for election, the organization for struggle is non-partisan and must aim at including everybody. And that's why I'm sure you've been seeing us engaging other formations, other parties, so that we can have a strong, broad-based front that includes all formations of our society, including non-government organizations, people who are not in the politics. They must take part also. The Journalists Association, fortunately they are now paper spraying you, so you have a direct cause to fight for your own rights. So, organization. Why has organization not been successful up to now? Partly, it is the disorganization that is engineered from outside, but partly, it is our own fault. It is people who seek to gain positions, to gain privileges, to gain all kinds of things through the struggle itself. And once that happens, then there is rivalry. And once you are rivals, you will never fight. You will never fight. And so, in fact, because of that, rivalry, people aiming at all kinds of things and failing to look at what is happening today, failing to divorce what must be done in the period of struggle from what must be done in the period after struggle, which have been our challenges. I have personally been taking account of all this and my own role in it. And, you know, I resigned from being a leader of a political party to focus on how to change the country, which requires non-partisan participation of everybody. But still, everybody looks at me in the lens of FDC. Everybody looks at me in the lens of seeking leadership. And on this matter, I have not consulted any of my colleagues. I would like to tell the country that I made a personal decision arising out of all this, that not only will I focus the remaining short period of my life on the struggle, but when the struggle succeeds, and I believe it is soon, because, yes, because I've told you we are now dealing with a collapsed state. What we are dealing with is a collapsed state. Even the police that has been hunting us you go. They have no fuel. They have no paper to write on if you come to complain. They, it's just it's a share. It's a share of a state. And I believe we can push it down. But my personal decision is that once we bring down the regime that captured our state, I will not seek any leadership position myself. I will not accept any leadership position myself. Hopefully it helps to understand that there is a separation between struggle for the common good separate from struggle for personal positions or whatever. I've never been in the struggle for a personal position myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left my hospital profession. But now you hear, even whatever you are doing, you say, this one wants to be this, wants to be that. I don't want to be anything. But I will not leave the struggle. I will, in fact, intensify whatever I need to do as a person. And they should stand warned, because I am soon to be 67 years. The book of Proverbs in the Bible gives us the age of 70 as our life. So I have 3 years. They are going to face these 3 years with me. A very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Welcome to this morning's presser. Excuse us for the less than adequate facilities to accommodate you. I can see all these things being balanced on this small podium on which I intended to put my own notes. But this is the home of the Red Card Front, People's Front for Transition. And this is a struggle front. And so whatever you experience that is not in line with the orderliness of institutions you are used to dealing with, understand that here we are in the trenches. And so our facilities are similarly reflective of that. Now, I'm sure as many of you may have been aware, I haven't been around in the country for some time. And that was not because I had taken some leave to relax. It was because, unfortunately, I became indisposed suddenly. Really, can't these things peak when they are down here too? Because there is no way you are going to fit all these things up here, and more people will keep on coming until all these things fall. Those who are picking especially just audio, you can put, even if it is down here, of all the things I may have compromised, my voice is not one of them. I can project it and it catches your equipment, wherever it is. So I was saying that paused. I got a sudden attack of an illness that I first thought was an ordinary thing. I tried using my own knowledge to deal with and failed, and eventually thought it wise to get out. Because we live in a rather difficult environment, I'm sure all of you know that we are always worried of being poisoned. Poison is something that even the media has been very worried about, and everybody is worried about. So if you are unwell and not clear what is causing it, you get worried. Happily, having gone to the good centers where all things can be explored, it became clear that I had had a viral infection which caused my sudden problems, the acute illness that I had. And like all viral infections, there are no specific treatments, only supportive treatments, and the body heals itself. And so by the grace of God, because when we say the body heals itself, it is really the grace of God. So the grace of God healed me, and I came back in full swing like I have always been. So that was the reason I was away. Some of our colleagues fear to talk about ailments that afflict people who are in leadership of anything. And I don't believe that. So even while I was away, people were cagey about saying what had caused my disappearance, although quite many of them knew the situation. But that was the situation, and as I've said, I am happily back in full swing. While away, a lot of things have been happening, and address them together at a go. What has been happening, I must say, is nothing new, nothing unexpected. It is part and parcel of what has been going on for the last couple of decades now. It's only the magnitude, it's only presentations of it, manifestations of it, but it is the same situation that we have been dealing with. And so at this meeting, I only spend a little time on talking about the manifestation of those problems, and then deal with what really needs to be done. That is more important, I think, for the country than just addressing what the problem is. Both are important, because unless you clearly understand what the problem is, you are likely to offer wrong remedies. Now, in 2011, at the launch of this platform, this struggle platform, we did present to the country what we called the Ugandan crisis. And it was 2021. It was crystallized in this document, the crisis in Uganda today. And it's also available in soft copies. Those who want to get it can get it from us. This crisis has been developing over time. The social, economic, political, even environmental and climate crisis that the country faces has been developing over time. What we just did in this book was to capture how it was as of 2021. And in talking about the crisis, we also said at that time what had caused the crisis, what was driving the crisis. And the fundamental cause is what we characterized as the state capture in Uganda, the capture of the state by a cabal of people using force, using arms to capture all power of state, to capture all institutions of the state. And therefore, for the population and all in the state to be just subjects, observers of those who had captured the state. And it was clear that those who had captured the state had captured all the wealth of the country. That's what capturing the state means. You capture control of the wealth. So the population is not in control of the wealth within Uganda. They captured this decision making. They are the ones who decide. They are sovereign. They are the state. And that we made it clear that those who captured the country were embodied in the family of Mr. Museveni. And that we are captives in the state of Uganda. And that those who had captured the state were using the resources of Uganda for mainly 4 or 5 purposes. First, to entrench their capture, to entrench their control, and make sure that nobody has a say. That is what they used resources primarily for, their priorities, to entrench their capture of the state. 2, to expand their power, even beyond Uganda. So, entrenchment, expansion. 3, to disempower all others so that they are easily controllable. In other words, domestic entrepreneurship also to be captured. And that's why, indeed, if you look for the people who control the economy, it's not Ugandans. They pattern with some external interests in the control of the wealth of the country. Those who were Ugandan entrepreneurs were crushed. Ugandan financial institutions were crushed. There is no financial institution now that you can talk of as a Ugandan institution, save the struggling Catholic-controlled bank, the Centenary Bank. All banks of Ugandans were crushed. All who had wealth, the cooperative societies that had wealth, were crushed. So to disempower all and empower themselves, that was their third priority. And it continues. Anything you get, if they hear you are getting something, they extend their hand to get it. Even taxes, now they are looking for whoever is making even the smallest thing, they want to get it. So that is their priority number 3. And together with that priority is patronage. Because they control the wealth, they become the givers. Anybody who is to get anything, it is them to give. Handouts. That was their priority number 3, disempower all and build patronage system. If you want to be a journalist who has anything, you must work with them, they give you a brown envelope. If you want to be a doctor, you must kneel down and clap your hands and say, thank you, Father, you have given me something. Patronage and disempowerment and patronage. Priority number 3. Priority number 4, control of information and propaganda. So that anybody who has to speak things they are not in support of or different views, they are either completely shut down or clouded out by their own noise and propaganda. And they have swarms of noisemakers in that regard, whether in the social media, whether in the mainstream media, whether in the Bakubiba Masimu, people who call on the on the radio stations, whether it is the people who are hosted by talk shows and so on. They make sure they are everywhere, clouding out any voice that shows what the real situation is. So that has been their priority, number 4. And that includes not just here, but international. You remember they were hiring people for millions of dollars, that they are public relations people. They pay them tens of millions of dollars to paint their image what it is not abroad. So that's their priority number 4. Their priority number 5 has been to make sure that nobody organizes against them. And any group that is organized, whether against them or not, that it's not harmonious, that it is divided and clashing. Because once it is organized at some stage, maybe it could pay attention to what they are doing. So they are anti-organization. Anti-organization, including what they claim to be their own organization. The NRM is not an organization. They can't allow it to be an organization, to be a strong organization, because it could then challenge them. So The people who captured the state have concentrated our resources in those 5 things. As a result, the crisis we are talking about started taking shape. Because they are not paying attention to health care of the people. In spite of the intensifying health challenges, go and check the budget. The budget for health is going down. I understand in the next financial year, from the framework that has just been discussed, the budget for health is going to go down about 8% of what it was. Because it's not a priority. And so you have the healthcare workers stranded. In Uganda today, a medical doctor serves between 20 to 25,000 people. One medical doctor. 20 to 25,000 people. But you heard there is no budget for medical interns. There is no budget for senior house officers, what they call senior house officers, the people who are specializing in different fields. There is no money for them. There will be no interns. And it's the interns that were running these institutions. So the healthcare system has totally collapsed as a result. You go to any healthcare institution. Recently, I had a patient in Mulago, a mother of one of our activists, who needed operation. It was horrific what we went through in Mulago. To get admitted, to get a file from casualty, we paid 20,000 shillings just to get a file. And mark you, we are not short of contacts. It's not like any other person just walking off the street. To get a bed on the ward, you have to pay. Anything prescribed, you have to buy. This lady was to undergo an operation. They gave me a whole list of things to buy before she could be taken to the theater, including stitching materials, what they used to close the wound of the incision, including buying gowns for those to participate in the operation. 3 gowns we had to buy in Naro Hospital of Uganda. So you can imagine what is happening in the health centers, Health Center 3, Health Center 4. So the crisis has been deepening. It's not a different crisis. It is the same, only that every year it deepens. The economy getting challenges because we are extracting from the economy. We are not investing into the economy. We are extractive. Not investing in agriculture, but extracting from there. You go into any field of agriculture or livestock husbandry, and you'll see the chaos you meet there. You know? So, the economy has been, suffering as a result. They have the enclave economy here, which they present. Uganda is prospering. MTN is here making money. I don't know who is making money. But what about ordinary folks? GDP, they talk about GDP. And the GDP is the money of Sudir and MTN and so on, divided amongst all these hungry mouths. See, that's what you have, you know. So it's the crisis that we want to address that is driven by that state capture. Look, you know, any country that does not pay attention to education is doomed. If a country does not build knowledge in its young people, it's doomed. We've talked here about the lack of investment in young people's education. That a child in Ugandan schools is provided for less than $3 a year. Less than 10,000 shillings. 10,000 shillings is less than $3 a year to build knowledge in a kid. And that kid to compete with the kid in Europe whom they spend on $10,000 a year. Compete with yours whom you spend on less than $3 a year. Who go and spend the whole day at school without eating anything. And that's why it's no wonder that they just drop out. That's why the dropout rate in primary schools is more than 70%. Because there is no purpose. They would rather go and graze goats. So the crisis in education has been intensifying. And their knee-jerk approach, we are now going to give money to scientists. That has created even greater crisis in education. Because the majority of people who run education are actually not scientists, including head teachers. Head teachers, most of the head teachers and administrators in schools are not scientists. You cannot be a headmaster earning a third of what your teacher is earning. So now we have many schools without qualified head teachers. You know, just the crisis intensifying. I received an SMS from a student at Makerere crying. Government-sponsored students in universities have not been given money. Most of them all of them have to fend for themselves to get anything to eat. Those who are in paid accommodation, but government-sponsored, have been thrown out of their accommodation. And you've been hearing students killing themselves. That is the crisis. You know, these are kids who now come and think the world has ended for them. So the crisis in education is unbelievable. Of course, everybody is dealing, I don't have even to talk about the crisis in infrastructure. Just look at the roads, you know. I read today in one of the papers that they have released 26 billion to fix the roads in the districts and in the urban centers. 26 billion to fix the roads in the districts and in the urban centers. And I heard one of the towns is getting 4 million shillings to fix the roads. It's a joke. You know, but that's the truth, that's the reality of what we are dealing with, you know. And you know, I saw another one complaining that when people show the terrible condition of roads, we scare away tourists. Why do you show these pictures? They will scare away tourists. So they want tourists to come and just drown We don't make roads for tourists. We make them first and foremost for ourselves. The tourists are beneficiaries of the roads we make for ourselves. But we have no roads to pass through, and we must raise our voices over this. So the infrastructure is a terrible situation, just part of that crisis of extraction, not being priorities. Just part of that. Now, hospital of Uganda. So you can imagine what is happening in the health centers, Health Center 3, Health Center 4. So the crisis has been deepening. It's not a different crisis. It is the same, only that every year it deepens. The economy getting challenges because we are extracting from the economy. We are not investing into the economy. We are extractive. Not investing in agriculture, but extracting from there. You go into any field of agriculture or livestock husbandry, and you'll see the chaos you meet there. You know? So, the economy has been, suffering as a result. They have the enclave economy here which they present. Uganda is prospering. MTN is here making money. I don't know who is making money. But what about ordinary folks? GDP, they talk about GDP. And the GDP is the money of Sudir and MTN and so on, divided amongst all these hungry mouths. See, that's what you have, So it's the crisis that we want to address that is driven by that state capture. Look, any country that does not pay attention to education is doomed. If a country does not build knowledge in its young people, it's doomed. We've talked here about the lack of investment in young people's education. That a child in Ugandan schools is provided for less than $3 a year. Less than 10,000 shillings. 10,000 shillings is less than $3 a year to build knowledge in a kid. And that kid to compete with the kid in Europe whom they spend on $10,000 a year. Compete with yours whom you spend on less than $3 a year. Who go and spend the whole day at school without eating anything. And that's why it's no wonder that they just drop out. That's why the dropout rate in primary schools is more than 70%. Because there is no purpose. They would rather go and graze goats. So the crisis in education has been intensifying. And their knee-jerk approach, we are now going to give money to scientists. That has created even greater crisis in education. Because the majority of people who run education are actually not scientists, including head teachers. Head teachers, most of the head teachers and administrators in schools are not scientists. You cannot be a headmaster earning a third of what your teacher is earning. So now we have many schools without qualified head teachers. Just the crisis intensifying. I received an SMS from a student at Makerere, crying. Government-sponsored students in universities have not been given money. Most of them all of them have to fend for themselves to get anything to eat. Those who are in paid accommodation, but government-sponsored, have been thrown out of their accommodation. And you've been hearing students killing themselves. That is the crisis. You know, these are kids who now come and think the world has ended for them. So the crisis in education is unbelievable. Of course, everybody is dealing, I don't have even to talk about the crisis in infrastructure. Just look at the roads, you know. I read today in one of the papers that they have released 26 billion to fix the roads in the districts and in the urban centers. 26 billion to fix the roads in the districts and in the urban centers. And I heard one of the towns is getting 4 million shillings to fix the roads. It's a joke. You know, but that's the truth, that's the reality of what we are dealing with, you know. And you know, I saw another one complaining that when people show the terrible condition of roads, we scare away tourists. Why do you show these pictures? They will scare away tourists. So they want tourists to come and just drown in the... We don't make roads for tourists, we make them first and foremost for ourselves. The tourists are beneficiaries of the roads we make for ourselves. But we have no roads to pass through, and we must raise our voices over this. So the infrastructure is a terrible situation, just part of that crisis, of extraction, not being priorities. Just part of that has been occupying the media lately is simply consequences of this crisis. You know, the corruption. People spend all their time talking about Mabati, iron sheets. Mabati are a minuscule, insignificant part of the robbery that is going on here. Insignificant. The kind of money that is robbed. I've told you, you know, for roads, they are giving 26 billion. But supplementary going to State House, supplementary, 90 billion. Supplementary going on top of what had been given, 90 billion. But for the roads, the whole country, 26 billion. You know? So, the corruption that people are talking about, it's only because that became very visible. Mabati are visible. The thieves of Mabati were unwise. They took what makes noise. Mabati make a lot of noise. You know, that's why they are in trouble. And they are visible. You know, this minister who has just gone to prison, I understand he used his to roof his cattle shed. Now, people who are passing under the shade, they see Prime Minister's office. Mabati make a lot of noise, you know. But these are not the main thieves. They are not the main thieves, and I agree with those who are saying, don't really, we are focusing on the wrong people. If anybody should be in prison, it must be Mr. Museveni and his cabal of thieves. You know, they are the people who should be in prison, because they are the people who have caused all this. You know, and it goes on. You know, before the Mabati there was NSSF. you saw what was going on in NSSF, that meetings of the National Social Security Fund, the money of workers, meetings and decisions were being taken in Kapeka at the home of Museveni's brother, General Saleh. That's where decisions on workers' money were being taken. You know? Again, and that NSSF is a share. All the money, this is what we were saying when we were fighting that people get mid-term benefits. The fight to stop the mid-term benefits was because there was no money, it's a share. The money was taken by government, that they are lending it to government. And in every year, they roll over what they lent to the government and add on more. You know? So the corruption we are focusing on, yes, it is visible. And those obviously who steal small things are also thieves and should pay for their for their transgressions. But the real challenge, the real problem is what is behind this. This stealing Mabati, you know, nobody can work in today's politics without stealing. Because it starts in the elections. In Uganda, we don't have elections, we have auctions. They auction. The highest bidder is the one who goes. So, to go to an election and win, you must carry tons of money. So having won, you must start building the war chest for the next auction. And it's, as I have said, it starts with Mr. Museveni himself. Except that Mr. Museveni orders Bank of Uganda to carry bullions to his office. These Chitutus have nobody to order. So they must go away with the Mabati to give the voters in order to come. And that's why they are doing that. It's all part of, and I heard Mr. Museveni condemning it as political corruption. Of course it's political corruption, but the whole system is built on political corruption. He is there because of political corruption, and that's why he can't fight it. He can't fight it. You know, this is a demonstration. These Mabatis are a demonstration of where the problem is. You can't be a head of state, president, commander in whatever, and you don't have information about who stole this. And you claim you are waiting for the courts or what? Now even the courts have worked, people are in jail, others are on bail, they are still ministers. So clearly, your ministers are just thieves. You know? I heard of one of our colleagues saying that they have a cabinet of monkeys which grab bananas wherever they see them. That's exactly what they are demonstrating. You know? Because how can you have from the Prime Minister, the Speaker, Vice President, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, what? Do we still have anything called government? You know? And the one who is their appointing authority, their controller, is there fidgeting. I saw him saying that those who had not used them can bring them back. So whoever steals should just, and his coach should just bring something back. Where will be the deterrence if the only action on those who steal is to be requested to bring these things back? So, ladies and gentlemen, it's this crisis. It's just growing every day. As I have said now, we have the collapse of the state, basically. Collapse of the economy, collapse of the state. Look at the local governments and urban authorities are literally closed. The local governments, all over, they are closed. Urban authorities, they are closed. Apart from those who get salaries, there is nothing going on there. And they claim, government is doing well, everything is moving on. The only thing moving on is patronage, taking some little money to confuse peasants that it is parish development money. As we've said, that's not how development is done, by giving handouts. It's nonsense. But that's what is being undertaken. Of course, the crisis on the political side is now in full gear. In the political field is in full gear because everybody can see that Mr. M7 is growing weak, and that sooner or later he will go, whether he likes or not. That is now very, very clear. And that's why I think his son is active, moving around in total violation of law, just to demonstrate the impunity, to demonstrate that they are the state, they are the law. And the country is observing, powerless about anything to do. There is an MK army. They move with their guns and so on, and assemble people and address. And when anyone else even wants to hold an indoor meeting, like we were trying to hold prayers at Sharing Hall, then hell breaks loose. You can't even hold an indoor meeting. Or when we wanted to address the question of ECOP, the oil pipeline, then hell breaks loose. That crisis of succession is clearly playing out. Those around Museveni are worried about what happens if he doesn't wake up. And that's why there is a lot of that agitation. Their concern is to maintain the state capture. Their concern is not to change, is not to end the state capture, it is to maintain the state capture. But that is, a political crisis that we have to deal with. The country should focus on how to end this. This has been around for all this time. How do we end it? And that is, as we have pointed out time and time again, the reason we are. We wake up every day focused on how do we end state capture, because that is the problem. how do we end the capture of the state and have sovereignty of Ugandans rather than sovereignty of Mr. M7 and the family limited. And the reason we engage you is that we must engage the population. Ending this will not take just leaders. It will take the people of Uganda in their wide societies that they live in. Everybody must be engaged, or most people, a critical mass of Ugandans must be engaged in order to end this. It will not be wished away. It will not be ended by these leaders or whoever leaders. Ugandans must be active in ending this. And that's why we set up the People's Front for Transition, to help our people to become focused on the problem and to deal with it. Becoming focused and dealing with it has not been easy because of what I talked about, the actions of those who don't want it to end. The propaganda, the misinformation, the division of people who are supposed to end it. It has not been easy. But thank God we have remained focused and dealing with it. And the objective of what we are doing is to have a reset of the state. There must be a complete reset. It won't be solved by, having dialogue and reforming this or reforming that or adjusting on this. There is a need for a whole reset of the state to get it out of capture, to have different owners of the state. That's what it will take. And once that reset has happened, the ownership has changed of the state, then the structuring of the state must happen, or restructuring will happen after ownership has changed. And obviously in the media, during this time, especially when I was away, was the question of homosexuality. And not only was it in the media, but it also focused on me as a person, on my family, and there has been a lot of mobilization around it. In fact, the country almost became hysterical about it, which rather surprised me that, they are not talking about. It's okay to focus on it, and I will also talk about it. But to hear nobody talking about this terrible crisis, in the churches, in the mosques, it's only homosexuality, not the death of our children, not the lack of knowledge of our children, not the health crisis that has engulfed the whole country, not the infrastructure that is broken, not what, but there has been, a lot of talk about homosexuality. It's an important thing. We must talk about it. but to talk about it to the exclusion of others rather, shocked me. So this is a matter that, because especially it has sucked me and my family into it directly, it is a matter that I feel we must comprehensively address. And for that reason, we are not going to address it at this presser to mix it with all this. It will be addressed at its own specific presser to deal with this matter, which obviously has become a very big concern for the country. We shall address it directly and comprehensively in all its dimensions. And, of course, the law that was passed, I don't know where it is. It's not the first time that the law is being passed. Even in 2014, a law was passed after, again, a lot of mobilization, and the law was signed with a lot of pomp and publicity. Then it was struck down and there was quiet. I don't know where those who had proposed the law went. It was quiet. Now it has, there is another area of concern. So we shall address this very, very comprehensively, very directly in the next, in the next presser, specifically for this matter. And on that, I think that ends what we need, what we intended to say.
To extend my sincere gratitude to the media. We thank you very much for highlighting the crisis in Kampala, rather, the broken down infrastructure in Kampala. You have put Kampala in a spotlight. Not only Kampala, by the way, it's countrywide. The crisis is countrywide, the broken infrastructure. I thank the media for that noble duty, noble cause you have championed. I thank you very, very much, because we monitor everywhere in the mainstream and social media. Everybody is agitated. People are crying out. And I must applaud, there is one Ugandan who came up with the idea of running an exhibition, about potholes in Kampala. We thank you very, very much, particularly those of you who have come out to spearhead this particular cause to shine a torch on what is happening in Kampala. But I must bring you, I think, news which will dampen your hopes further, because the situation is not about to get any better. Why? Because the crisis is deepening, like a doctor has observed here. The crisis is deepening because, one, the institution is broke. The institution of KCC. Just like all these other agencies of government, we are not spared the crisis. There is no money, to the extent that actually the suppliers of key materials are on strike. Those who are supposed to supply us with asphalt, they went on strike. Those who are supposed to supply us with fuel, Total in particular, they went on strike. They cut off the supply on account of failure to pay areas. So those areas have been piling up, accumulating year in, year out. And they reached a point and said, no, we can't continue supplying fuel to you. We can't continue supplying asphalt. So most of our trucks are grounded. Most of the civil works have stalled simply because there is no money. But now we got some trickling of some little money which trickled in from African Development Bank 288 million US dollar, which was totaling to up around 1 trillion. And we raised the red flag and said, Ugandans, there is this money which has come in. But we have looked at the way it's going to be disbursed, the appropriations being made. It's also going to be squandered. It's going to be siphoned off. Let's plug the loopholes. All of you come out and join us in this struggle. And then they started punching us, they started hammering us, they started doing ABCD. But as we have always told you, they even reached the point of saying, we are not going to give you contracts. For us to even access the actual contracts, they had signed with the contractors who are going to do the civil works. And eventually, they even reached a point of insisting that, look, if we continue like that, they are going to take other drastic measures. They calculated each kilometer to cost 15 billion Uganda shillings, the highest worldwide. 15 billion Uganda shillings. It's a lot of it. So it's the reason we are inviting everybody. Please join us. I'm glad now this one has affected everybody across the board. It's not only about border cyclists, it's not about matatu operators, but even my cars, those who are driving huge SUV vehicles, they are all affected. So every time they call out, I see them crying out in the social media, I said, yes, this is an equalizer. But it should be an eye-opener to all of you that we need to address these matters in earnest, early enough, instead of indulging in the possible. Because with Mabati, with iron sheets, the scandal, the bonanza, it's now about a post-mortem. And for us, we said this money is yet to be taken or siphoned off by the cartels from the central government who are colluding with their agents or proxies here in Kampala. Please, let's make quick interventions before this money is siphoned off. Our voice fell on deaf ears, very few people listened in, and now the crisis is with us. So please listen to our call so that we deal with this matter as a people and as all the stakeholders. I thank you very much.